You're listening to the Warrior Rulebook podcast with me, Monique Harmon. I love helping people express themselves, protect their peace, and be confident in being them. You may also know me as Pretty Nikki, who started her online journey as a modest fashion blogger. Now I'm an entrepreneur. You'll see through my experiences and the experiences of others that change is possible, improvement is tasty, and meaningful connection is transformational. Come on, share your story with me. The stories and information presented in my podcast is not intended to take the place of medical advice from a healthcare professional. So any exercise, diet, health-related, mental health matters vary from person to person. So nothing in the podcast will be construed or used as a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Any action taken based on the contents of this podcast or the resources is solely at your own discretion, risk, and liability. So this podcast is simply here to be encouraging, but you should definitely seek a healthcare professional for additional help. Now let's get on to the show. At some point or another, you may have encountered a narcissist. Maybe they lie for no reason, and you keep questioning yourself as to why. Maybe they've isolated you, saying that no one will believe you. Or maybe they might have even gaslighted you and accused you of things that you never did. They actually accused you of things that they're guilty of doing. So today I want to talk with a trusted friend about this topic. His name is Eli Davis, and he really loves to learn. He would describe himself as a glutton for wisdom. He's an avid reader and learner, and he's starting a vlog really soon, which is really exciting. His ultimate dream is to do something to impact the lives of many people in the world, which is something that I want to do. And one of his favorite books is called On the Shortness of Life by Seneca. And hopefully he'll dive into why that book is his favorite. So without further ado, is Eli Davis. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so can you tell us about that book, or if it even relates to today's topic?
It could somewhat. Well, basically, narcissists can cause a lot of stress in your life. And On the Shortness of Life by Seneca, it kind of deals with, I guess, the fact that we stress the wrong things and how we basically waste a lot of our lives pursuing the wrong things, and that could cause stress. So I guess the link there would be the factor of stress, But it's mainly that I just find it an interesting read, and it can really change your perspective on a lot of things, kind of like Narcissists do. But this one does it for the good.
Okay, so can you tell me about your experience with the narcissist, and just kind of what emotions were you going through at that time, and what type of person were you back then when this happened?
Okay, so I've dealt with a narcissist for probably most of my life. And at one point, they were probably closer to me than anyone else, And that's the thing about the narcissistic type, is that you don't always, especially if you don't know what a narcissist is in the sense that we're using it, you don't always know that you're dealing with that type of person, As far as the type of person I was, well, largely the narcissist shaped somewhat the type of person that I became back then, and even to some extent today. It kind of trained me into being more passive and into being more afraid to, speak up, and being more afraid to be assertive. Many people who teach assertiveness will tell you that a lot of times the reason why people are frequently more passive than assertive It's because in the past, when they were assertive, they would get punished for it. And it kept happening over and over. And eventually, if you don't know any better, like especially if you're younger or even if you're older, really, uh, you could develop the mindset of, well, this method of communication isn't working. I get punished for it. And, you just kind of become apprehensive to do it. You know, if you're dealing with a narcissistic person, especially if you grow up dealing with them like I did, it kind of caused me to think everyone was like that. And, kind of caused me to think that everyone sort of expected me to put their needs above mine, and, that was the right thing to do. And it caused me to expect anyone to react irrationally or angrily or punish me somehow for, being honest and assertive. And it can actually be a pretty difficult mindset to break out of, because, we pick up habits like, and when I say we pick up habits, I'm not talking about, actions or anything. Just like, I'm not only talking about actions, we also pick up habits with our thought processes, and a lot of times we pick those up without even really realizing it, you know so if you habitually pick up the mindset, let me not assert myself because this person will punish me. Like, even if you're just dealing with that one person, if you deal with them enough, eventually that'll just be automatic, to the point where you don't even really realize that it's happening. So the type of person that turned me into was just passive, just be afraid to speak up for myself. And, it'd be really easy for people to walk over me pretty much. It also turned me into a resentful person a lot of the time, because what happens often is when someone does something to you and they kind of surpass, transgress a boundary that you have, and you don't speak up, a lot of times that'll just fester in you. Brene Brown, who is actually a really good, awesome writer, writes a lot of good personal development books. She has some. She did one. I want to say it was a presentation. It's on Audible. I think it's called The Power of Vulnerability or something. But she has a quote on there that she tells herself whenever she feels she needs to assert herself, which is, this discomfort is better than resentment. That's something it's almost like a mantra she has. Discomfort is better than resentment. And, but the thing is, if you're trained by the narcissistic personality that you deal with, not to deal with that temporary discomfort that can come with being assertive, you're only going to have the resentment with you. It'll seem like, you exploded on someone because they left their sock on the floor one time, and the person is just going to think you blew up on them because of that, when really it was the result of a bunch of stuff kind of piling up and building up until it just reached the maximum capacity, And so another thing it kind of made me into was, this I would say is a positive and a negative, right? It made me nicer. So there are good reasons why it made me nicer, and there are bad reasons why it made me nicer, if you get what I'm saying. The good reasons why it made me nicer is because I know what it's like to feel like someone doesn't give 2 cents about you, and I don't want to cause anyone else to have that feeling. So it's always really important to me that others feel like know that I care about them, and know that how they feel and what they want matters to me. The bad reasons why it made me into a nicer person is because for a while I was just too scared to be mean to anyone. And so, yeah. And so that could be, I would actually say that I would argue that that's not actually a nice person. Someone who's too scared to be mean, because you're not being kind out of concern for the other person or out of empathy. You're being kind out of fear.
Right.
Like it's good to be kind, but you also have to have the right reasons for it. Now I'm kind because I care about the other person. I want them to feel, appreciated and warm. But if you're nice because you're just afraid to be a little abrasive, which sometimes you have to be, I would argue that it's not nice. You know why? Another reason is because you're not actually being nice to yourself. Like, here's what I say, right? You can't say that you're nice to everyone if you're not nice to yourself.
Right.
You're someone too, You're someone, I'm someone. If I'm nice to everyone, but then I treat myself like trash, I'm not nice to everyone. I can't say that. Okay. And so
I have a question.
Sure.
Do
you know me.
Yeah.
Ramble on and on and on.
Yeah. So, like, do you think that some people kind of take towards like the negative side as far as like they kind of pick up on the narcissist behavior and they start being mean as a means of self-preservation?
Yeah, in fact, I would say that the narcissists that I deal with, I'm pretty sure their parents is narcissists that I dealt with. I deal with them sometimes in situations where I have to, but I would say their parent was actually like that. From what I've heard about their parent, they were actually like that towards them. And so a lot of times that can happen where if you're the victim of a certain type of behavior, here are two negative consequences that often happen with that, especially if you're raised in a certain way. Like, because again, narcissists don't necessarily have to be your guardians, but in the situation where someone was raised by a narcissist, two things can often happen as far as the negatives. One is they become like that themselves because people tend to imitate their guardians or people who raise them. Another is they become the type of person that attracts narcissists.
Wow. So how does that?
Because narcissists can often tell the type of person that would be passive enough for them to continue dealing with. You know what analogy I would give?
What?
I would compare it to a bed. If you sleep on a bed long enough, it'll eventually kind of, what's it called? What's that mattress that kind of takes on your shape and kind of adapts to your shape? I forget what it's called. Tempur-Pedic or something like that. It's something like that, but it's a mattress that it has like it's memory foam.
Yeah, I used to remember like the Tempur-Pedic commercials when I was younger.
Yeah, I think that's the pillow though, but I could be wrong. But basically, the victim of narcissists sort of function as memory foam, in that they sort of conform and adapt to that type of behavior in a way so they adapt in a way that suits that behavior. So victims of narcissists can often become more passive people who are afraid to speak up for themselves and afraid to really assert themselves. And what will happen is other narcissists out there will see that you're that type of person and try to connect with you because, they need more people to sort of feed their ego, and more people to sort of prioritize them over themselves. And so what often will happen, this is what I hear, is that people who are raised by narcissists can often end up marrying a narcissist, can often end up constantly dating different types of narcissists, befriending narcissists, because they can sense that somehow. The narcissist can sense that you're the type of person that would just let them walk all over them. And also, a lot of times, unfortunately, a lot of people tend to think, especially if they were raised a certain way, that type of behavior is normal. And, it's often said that how we're raised and how our parents treat us often affect what we look for in a partner. And so oftentimes a person can sort of like unknowingly seek out the narcissistic type. You know, their behaviors will be like, you know, have you thinking, wow, there's something about this person that we just connect, it just works. And it's because you've been forced, I guess, by trauma to just be used to that type of person. Like you take a kid where it's like all they were eating was junk food all their life, and then you try to give them some celery, like they can't even, their mouth probably won't even register that it's food, you know, like they can't even chew it. And so that's a lot, that can deal with a lot of times the type of, that's some of what it can affect, you know, that's one thing it can do. It can also cause you to, this is, I know this is a topic that we'll get into later, but to answer the question of what type of person I was, is it caused me to doubt my own memory. And that's what the narcissist did. But yeah, it caused me to doubt my memory. You know, whenever whenever the narcissist would do something, or say something belittling, make a belittling comment, or say they were going to do something, promise they were going to do something, and then refuse to keep their word, and I would, confront them about it, they would deny that they ever said that, or they would slightly misconstrue what was said. They would really, really stick to their story and really insist that I did it, to the point, and they would say, no, you just don't remember. You just don't remember that happening.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they would say, you're just trying to, they would say, you're changing, something like you're changing your memories, or something like that, or you're recalling what you want to recall. And this would happen very often. They would say, it's all in your head. You know, that's textbook gaslighting. And
it just sounds so crazy, like hearing it like in that way, saying like, oh, you just want to remember like what you want to remember, but it's like that's a delicate thing, like to mess with somebody's memory. Like it's one thing like to like tease your friend and be like, that's not what happened, like you don't remember, and then saying like legit like you're just remembering what you want to remember. Like that just sounds so hurtful.
Yeah. You're remembering the wrong thing, or you don't remember this happened. Why don't you remember this? Something's wrong with your memory. Stuff like that. But yeah, and they would always imply that I had some type of mental disorder or other. So either say I was depressed or anger issues. There was basically a mental disorder of the week. And what will often happen is, especially when it was something they did long ago, but still, like, it still hurts me, because a lot of times when someone hurts you, a lot of times for me, like, I just want a sincere apology. You know what I mean? I get that people aren't perfect, but if you just acknowledge, like, yeah, I messed up, I did that, I shouldn't have done it, and I'm not okay with the fact that I did it. I regret doing it. Something like that. Something to let me know that you actually give 2 cents about the fact that you did something. But what would happen with them is, whenever I bring it up, they would always distort it or spin the narrative to make it where they were the victim and that I was the aggressor. And when that happens enough, when you hear a lie enough, it becomes easier and easier to believe it. That's part of why, misinformation spreads so much. See, lying is a skill just like anything else, where the more you do it, the better you get at it. This person knew how to subtly add more and more details, to the point where, like, each time they changed the story a little bit, it was still believable, because it was still pretty close to what I remembered. So I would end up thinking, well, wait, maybe I did do that thing. You know,
Yeah.
maybe I did do this or that. Maybe I did provoke them. Maybe I did have it coming. And then they add more and more details to the point where I end up looking like a monster. And that's what I ended up believing about myself for a while, is that, you know, I was just no matter how hard I tried, I was just some sort of heartless monster, aggressive, angry, depressed monster. It really affects your self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a while to get to sort of come out of that. Like, especially if you don't know that you're dealing with that type of person. Like, once I learned about what a narcissist is and what they do and what gaslighting is, like, that pretty much opened up everything. You know, it made so much stuff so much clearer, and it helped me. It kind of put me in the right direction to sort of, you know, undo a lot of what they did.
And so do you think that the narcissists themselves kind of have like this sense of like they're doing something wrong, but it's kind of like a drug and that's all they know how to do. So like that's why they just keep projecting that power on them? Or is it like in all cases where they're just like, oh, it's just all about me and my power? And another thing I would want to know is like, you know, those anger issues and mental deficiencies, for lack of a better term, would that be more of a reflection of what the narcissist is experiencing?
So, okay. So it seems like your first question is like, do they know what they're doing, basically? Like,
Yeah, do they kind of have like a conscience at all? Like, I know that this is wrong, but it feels right.
okay. So that's honestly something that I wondered for a while and am not entirely sure about. Like, as far as if they know, because here's the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some liars actually, after a certain point, end up believing their own lies. You know, like maybe this truth is kind of suppressed deep down to the point where like they may forget that it's kind of there, but like that's because they're actively trying to suppress it.
Mm-hmm.
But with this person, whenever I would come close to exposing them, they would do everything they can and deliberately change details.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. Like, for a while, I would think maybe this person can't help it. But it's how deliberate a lot of it seems often. Where, like, they would deliberately cherry pick certain details and deliberately leave things out. And they're very good actors. That's the thing about narcissists. A lot of times, a lot of people don't even know that that's what they are, you know, because they're so good at projecting an image of just a warm, kind person to everyone except for their victim,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And so that's part of what makes it difficult to that's also part of what makes it easy for the victim to kind of doubt their sanity.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you would try to tell other people, no one really believes you. Because they're like, what? I don't see that person. I see a nice, kind, gentle, delicate, loving person, you know? And so because of that, and because they're so good with lying, like it seems it's actually very difficult to convince others. But like as far as how that is relevant to your question, I if I had to like place a bet, I would place it on yes, that they know what they're doing. And the reason why is because of how deliberate it is. The reasons like the thing I just described, like the deceptive behavior and the fake, the lies and the slight distortions of what they would do. It seems too deliberate to be something that you're kind of unknowingly doing, you know, like there has to be planning involved. The next question I believe you said was are the things they say about me sort of what they feel about themselves, basically?
Yeah.
Like, are they project? It seems like, yeah, it seems like it would be like, are they projecting or something like that, right? Like,
yeah.
I would
Makes sense.
say yeah. No, yeah, it does. It makes total sense. I would say yeah. A lot of time with the person that would do that with me. Yeah. Listen, because you actually reminded me of another thing that they would often do is like literally. I'm not exaggerating when I say it would seem like everything that would come out of their mouth was some sort of complaint about me or some sort of negative criticism about me. That's part of why it affected the self-esteem. But I believe because a lot of things they would say about me were actually the case about them. So I actually do believe that there's a lot of projection going on there, which is what that would be, like saying other people are doing, like have problems that you have. I would say there's a lot of that there, because I would also say that the thing about narcissists is even though they're so concerned about other people feeding their ego, their own self-esteem is actually very fragile. And so I would say that was part of it, you know, part of when I started to believe a lot of the criticisms that they would give about me and thus affecting my self-esteem. I would actually say it was because their self-esteem actually was just very fragile, and they had an unhealthy way of coping with it, basically. And likely theirs was very fragile because they were raised by one. In my situation.
Okay. So, do you think that narcissism is hereditary or like spirit thing?
From what I've read, I think people are thinking that there might be a genetic component to it. And I mean, a lot of personality traits tend to be hereditary. You know, I can see some of your mom in you, like 100%. And a lot of people say that. You know, the whole sweetness thing, the kindness thing, like it's there. Your question is actually it touches on something that a lot of people have been wondering about for a while, which is the whole nature versus nurture thing, where it's like how much of your behavior is based on your environment and how much of it is based on your genes. And as someone who, now a lot of people agree that it's both, but then it's like, you know, how much of it, how much of each, as far as like what the psychologists think. As someone who has a lot of faith in a human's capacity to improve themselves and who has a lot of faith in our ability to make our own decisions no matter how difficult things are, I would have to say that it's largely a result of the person. Just because I really place a lot of emphasis on, you know, what's the word? I guess our agency, our free will. You know, I'm a free will guy. Like we're responsible for our behavior, point blank. If you are raised by a jerk, you still don't have to be a jerk. You know, if you are raised by a nice person, you may not end up being a nice person. It depends on you. It's your responsibility. So I would say even if there were some genes that maybe created a tendency towards that type of behavior, it's still them choosing to engage on it, you know, to engage in it. So I would say that the responsibility pretty much falls on the person, you know. Not it's them.
Tell me about how to deal with the manipulative criticism of a narcissist, and bring up that book that you told me about.
It's actually funny because when I bought the book, the intention wasn't really to deal with a narcissist. It was to deal with a certain type of behavioral pattern that I tended to have that was actually a result of dealing with the narcissist. And I actually didn't know that that behavior came from that until I connected the dots later on in the book. But I was trying to learn basically how to be more assertive. The name of the book is When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. And it's said to be the number one bestseller on assertiveness training. And it's by Manuel J. Smith. And so yeah, it's about basically learning how to say no, which is it's a very key part of being assertive. You know, it doesn't go too much into when you need to confront someone else, though it does to some degree. It more so deals with you dealing with people who are trying to manipulate you, which is what narcissists like to do, because a lot of times they tend to be obsessed with control, you know. And so yeah, it teaches you how to deal with a lot of the mind games that people play. And so one of the techniques that the narcissist, one of the techniques in the book that it teaches about is the broken record. I would say that's probably the main one that you need to learn. But the broken record it's exactly how it sounds. You just keep, it's basically calm, calmly, neutrally repeating that you're not going to do what the person is trying to manipulate you into doing. So let's say you were trying to get me to lend you $15, right?
Yeah.
And I would basically say, I'm not, I can't do it. I'm not going to lend you $15. And you would say, come on, lend me 15. I lent you some money before and I'd say, I understand, but I'm not going to do it. And I would basically keep repeating, I'm not going to do it. Sorry, I'm not going to do it. I understand, but I'm not going to do it. I understand how you feel, but I'm not going to do it. And repeating that over and over, because the point he makes is everyone has a limited number of repetitions in their bag. The other person has a limited number of no's in their bag. And the person who's trying to manipulate you has a limited number of come on mans in your bag. And so he tries to say, don't really get into going back and forth with the logic of it, because at the end of the day, you don't really owe an explanation for why you're not going to lend someone $15. It's your money. And a lot of times when people can trick you into discussing it, they can kind of confuse you and either cause you to get out of character and get angry, or cause you to sort of break down and end up giving them what they want. So it's to calmly and neutrally repeat, I understand you're in a bad situation. I understand how you feel. I'm not lending you $15. Sorry, but I'm not lending you $15. Keep repeating that. Eventually the person will back off. But the key is you don't want to show, fear or anger or anything like that. You just want to keep neutrally doing it. And the person will kind of just, that really helps them pick up that you're not going to change their mind about this. If you get angry, they might think they can manipulate you. If you're afraid, like, I don't know if I can, I don't feel like, I don't know if I should, it's the person might see that as a cue, like, oh, I could push this person, Negative assertion is it's more or less agreeing with it kind of goes hand in hand with blocking. So it's actually better if I explain. Actually, you know what would be awesome?
Mm-hmm.
if we could kind of reenact this, right?
So
Yeah, so like, okay, let's say I'm like, hey Neek, give me $1 million.
no.
Come on, give me $1 million.
Do I just keep saying,
See,
or do I?
you could say no, or you could say I'm not giving you $1 million. Basically, I have to kind of add other stuff here because a lot of these techniques are kind of connected.
Okay.
Is a lot of times it's often good to say, I understand how you feel, but I'm not giving you $1 million. You know, something like that. I just realized how goofy that phrase sounds. No, I didn't make that clear. The reason why is because, like, the person sees, okay, they took note of my point, they're still not moving, basically. Like, it still doesn't matter to them. So that being said, give me $1 million.
No.
Come on, give me $1 million.
I understand, but I'm not giving you $1 million.
Neek, I thought we were friends. Give me $1 million.
I understand, but I'm not giving you $1 million.
If you really understood, you would give me $1 million.
I do understand. That's why you're not getting $1 million.
So that was great. What he would probably emphasize is that you kind of keep it like sort of samey, you know, just as samey as possible. So that way, that's the whole broken record part. You know, broken record is because, you know, it keeps playing the same part over and over again. You know, I went to town last night, you know, and it just keeps going. And so you're kind of just repeating that phrase. You know, I understand how you feel. I'm not giving you $1 million, which you are doing, but I just want to make that clearer. So, did you notice how I was going? What? Actually, I don't think I did. I was planning to. But suppose I started going, what kind of friend refuses to give me $1 million? Let's make it more realistic. If I'm asking you for a ride to the park, right? I'm asking you, let me borrow your car.
Oh, no.
And you refuse. Well then. No, like.
No, I mean,
If I'm like.
Not you, like, it's okay.
Excuse me. No, like, if I'm asking you, right, to give me a ride, to let me borrow your car to go to the park, and you're refusing, and I'm like, what kind of person would refuse to give their friend a ride to the park? It's that type of question, right? Where it's like, what kind of person would do this? Because what I would be implying was that a bad type of person would do that. That's what I'm subtly implying. Even though I'm supposed to be your friend, I'm calling you a bad person or calling you a bad friend if I ask that question. And so what he suggests you do, which I don't always feel comfortable doing, but he would say this would be called a negative assertion. I think this one is negative assertion, where you'd be like, well, I don't know. What kind of person would? And that's negative inquiry. Like, what kind of person would? Like, a bad person. I'd say a bad person or something like that. And then you still go back to saying, I understand how you feel, but I'm not letting you take my car to the park. The thing is, you have to, and this happens over time, like you have to practice it. Just like any skill, it gets better with practice. You have to get used to constantly doing that broken record thing. Initially, it's going to feel uncomfortable because you're used. If you're the passive type, you're used to eventually conforming, I guess, or giving in to what the other person wants if they push you enough. And so, because this is not what you're used to, and additionally, because you're punished for being assertive in the past, there's going to be some degree of discomfort and anxiety when you're first trying out the broken record thing, which is why it's important to remember that Brene Brown quote, discomfort is better than resentment, because those are really your two choices. You can either deal with the temporary discomfort of saying no to this person as long as it takes, or you can deal with the resentment that often lasts a lot longer and can often lead to more uh, um, harmful consequences in the future, because as resentment builds up, like, it will inevitably explode, maybe not even on the person you're resentful towards, but as resentment builds up, it eventually blows up, you know, or it'll come out through passive aggression, which can also be a destructive way, an unhealthy way of coping.
Tune into the next episode to hear the second part of this discussion. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Warrior Rulebook podcast. If you like what you heard, share it with a friend and join me over at the Warrior Rulebook Podcast Insider group on Facebook. And don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for more tips on how to be resilient in this world.